Hello, and welcome to a video that will help you gain a clearer, more conscious relationship with your inner life. You see, one of the most crucial aspects of spiritual awakening is to break free from our identification with thoughts, emotions, and the false identity that has been built up prior to our awakening. This is a process that will gradually happen on its own, and towards the end, we will realize that the only constant within us is pure awareness. Everything else is in a state of change, and none of it is fundamentally us. In the Fourth Way tradition founded by Gurdjieff and expanded upon by his students, inner separation refers to the practice of cultivating an objective awareness of the self. This approach emphasizes a practical and experiential path toward understanding human psychology and spirituality. Inner separation involves creating a distinction between what you are and what you observe within yourself. In other words, it is the ability to maintain an observer state, seeing your actions, thoughts, emotions, and reactions without identifying with them. This practice helps to achieve a sense of inner detachment, which is necessary for the development of self-consciousness and higher awareness. The Fourth Way tradition teaches that much of what is called conscious behavior in everyday life is, in fact, mechanical. Most of the time, you are not truly aware of your actions. Rather, you operate out of habit, reacting automatically to external stimuli. To develop real consciousness, one must first recognize this automaticity and begin to separate from it. Inner separation is a key tool in this process because it allows you to observe these automatic processes without getting absorbed in them. Correctly understood, this is a huge change in perspective, and if you haven't seen yourself and other people this way before, it ought to turn your world upside down. If you take this knowledge to heart, you suddenly realize that you, most of the time, are sleepwalking through life, just reacting habitually to the situations that you find yourself in. You also realize that, since you don't really exercise any volitional control over your thoughts, words, and actions, they cannot have anything to do with who you really are. Next, if you observe yourself, you will see that you tend to respond in similar ways to similar situations, especially if the situations are emotionally triggering. You tend to think the same thoughts and say the same things, and much of your speech consists of empty words that don't really mean anything. You may, for example, find yourself giving advice to a friend that is little more than standard cliches, without taking your friend's personality or the details of his or her situation into account. In Gurdjieff's system, one of the primary obstacles to self-awareness is the fragmented nature of what is typically called personality. Personality in this tradition is seen as a collection of parts, many different ice, each vying for dominance at any given moment. These ice correspond to different moods, desires, and tendencies that shift throughout the day, often without your awareness. This creates a fragmented existence, where you mistakenly believe you are one unified being, but in reality, different parts are constantly taking over control, making you think, speak, and behave incoherently. Inner separation starts with recognizing this fragmentation. By observing the various ice as they appear, you begin to realize that there is no single permanent I behind your thoughts and feelings. Instead, you can cultivate an inner observer, a part of yourself that stands apart from the drama of conflicting desires and emotions. You need to get into the habit of just observing your inner drama without getting sucked into it. This is, by the way, also a core practice of acceptance and commitment therapy. It has already been stated that, for you to work with inner separation, it's important that you learn to observe yourself. In the Fourth Way tradition, self-observation is a cornerstone, and we will look a bit closer at how it is used in this context. If you wish to learn more about it, we have a whole video on it. There will be a link at the end screen. Self-observation is the practice of watching yourself, your thoughts, emotions, and actions without judgment or identification. The without judgment part is important here, as you are observing something that is just part of the human condition, and judging what you find will only cause pain, and you to hide things from yourself in order to avoid the pain. Self-observation forms the foundation for inner separation, allowing you to distinguish between the observer, the part of you that is aware, and the observed, your automatic behaviors and reactions. The act of observing oneself creates a small but significant gap between the observer and the observed. Through consistent self-observation, you begin to recognize the many mechanical, conditioned responses that typically drive your life. To use self-observation for inner separation, you must practice being present and watching how your different inner parts, thoughts, emotions, physical reactions, operate. By observing these without becoming involved in them, you create a gap between your true self and the automatic processes of personality. This gap allows you to stop identifying with the various ice that control your behavior, enabling the emergence of a more conscious, unified self, thus fostering real inner separation. For example, when you become angry, you often identify fully with the emotion. You say, "I am angry," and your awareness is consumed by the feeling of anger. There is no distance between the anger and the self. Inner separation, however, would involve recognizing the emotion as something separate from the essential self. You might instead say, "I see that there is anger in me," acknowledging the emotion without being overtaken by it. This kind of detachment is not about suppressing emotions, but about creating enough space to observe them without losing awareness of yourself. On a side note, the true self is ultimately also fleeting and illusory, as the only constant is awareness. However, as you're going through your awakening process, you will find that some parts of what you experience as you feel more authentic than others, and that when you examine yourself consciously, there are sides that you wish to keep, while you wish to let go of many others. Likewise, when you stop thinking of what you ought to want and start thinking about what you really want, you will find that you gravitate towards some things while moving away from others. Closely tied to this process is the practice of self-remembering. Self-remembering, a somewhat elusive concept that has to be experienced to be fully grasped, is basically the act of being present to yourself in the moment, an intentional awareness of both the outer world and your inner state. It is about being deeply aware that you are looking out through your eyes, inhabiting your body, and experiencing what you are experiencing. In this sense, it is similar to the deeper aspects of mindfulness. In the context of inner separation, self-remembering goes beyond simply observing your actions and reactions. It requires you to simultaneously maintain awareness of both the inner observer and the external world. While self-observation allows you to see the fragmented parts of your personality, self-remembering reconnects you with a deeper, unified sense of being. By practicing self-remembering, you reinforce the inner separation between the mechanical parts of your personality and your real observing self, the one that at its core is one with everyone and everything else, which in turn fosters a higher state of consciousness. Another concept that is central to the Fourth Way's teachings about inner separation is the concept of identification. Here, identification is the process of becoming so immersed in an emotion, thought, or action that you forget yourself, which is basically the opposite of inner separation. Identification leads to a lack of awareness and results in mechanical behavior. For example, if you're engrossed in an argument, you become entirely identified with the emotional responses of the moment. There is no sense of inner witness, no reflective consciousness watching the process unfold. You are, in effect, asleep to yourself. By practicing inner separation, you work to avoid identification. You train yourself to remain conscious and present, even in the midst of strong emotions, thoughts, or physical actions. Again, you are encouraged to see how this plays out for yourself, how you may suddenly find yourself in emotional turmoil, fiercely attacking and defending while having no clear thinking behind what you are saying. And yet, something inside tells you that it's very important to win and get your point across. These types of dynamics may for many people go on for years, decades, or even a lifetime without being seen for what they are. The fourth way, furthermore, teaches that human beings are divided between essence and personality. Essence is what is innate and true to a person, while personality is shaped by external influences and acquired through life. Essence represents the natural qualities and characteristics one is born with. It is the core of who you are, untouched by external influences. As we, at the core, are parts of the same infinite consciousness, and everything else is transient and subject to change, the question of essence and acquired personality is a complex one and beyond the scope of this video. There will be a video on how this is treated within the fourth way tradition shortly, and if you want to delve further into concepts such as non-duality and identity, you can check out David's other channel, Everyday Mystic, where he discusses these topics more in depth and in a more personal manner. Links to his channel are in the description and in the comments section. What can be said without a doubt is that what you consider to be yourself is actually personality, learned responses, roles, and masks adopted from society, family, and culture. Personality often dominates life, masking the deeper essence. Inner separation involves recognizing and disentangling from the personality, allowing essence to become more present. Another dimension of inner separation is recognizing the multiplicity of functions within a human being. According to Gurdjieff's teaching, you are composed of different centers: intellectual, emotional, and physical. These centers often act independently and even in opposition to one another, leading to inner conflict and a lack of harmony. For example, the intellectual center might tell you that something is wrong, while the emotional center feels good about it, and the physical center is simply reacting instinctively. Without inner separation, these centers mix in chaotic ways, making it difficult to act consciously. By observing these different centers, you can begin to understand how they operate and how they influence each other. Inner separation helps you to see this dynamic and begin the process of harmonizing the centers, allowing for more unified and intentional action. There will be a whole video on this topic as well shortly. What is important here is to recognize that in our normal sleeping state, the functions of these centers mix, so that, for example, the thinking center takes over the tasks of the emotional center, and vice versa, or the thinking center takes over the functions of the moving center. In our Western culture, where the intellect is so dominating, it's most common for the thinking center to try and take over the tasks of the other centers. Again, you are encouraged to see how this plays out in your own life. Another thing that is stressed in the fourth way is that this inner work must be done in the context of ordinary life. The fourth way is often called the way of the sly man because it does not require withdrawal from the world, as in monastic traditions. Instead, the challenges and demands of daily life are the very material you use for your inner development. Every moment of life offers an opportunity to practice inner separation, whether in moments of joy, frustration, or boredom. By bringing awareness to each moment and watching how you react, you can continually strengthen the inner observer. In summary, inner separation is a foundational practice in the fourth way tradition, aimed at helping you cultivate an objective awareness of yourself. By observing the different parts of your personality without becoming identified with them, you can begin to see through the illusion of a singular, unified self and start the process of harmonizing your inner world. Everyday life offers endless opportunities to practice self-remembering and detachment from mechanical reactions. This is a gradual process that requires patience. Gurdjieff taught that most people are so deeply asleep, so entrenched in mechanical behavior, that they do not even realize how unconscious they are. Inner separation is one of the first steps toward waking up from this sleep. But it is not enough to simply observe yourself once or twice. It must become a consistent practice. Each moment that you bring awareness to yourself strengthens the connection to your real self, the part of you that is capable of higher consciousness. The good news is that it can be practiced anywhere, at any time. This is, in essence, about a total shift in perspective and the development of a whole new, more intentional and conscious way of relating to life and your experiences. Even though it requires effort, it should not be looked upon as another burden in our already demanding modern world. In fact, as you start understanding what this is all about, life actually becomes easier. You are no longer at the mercy of internal processes that you understand little about or the circumstances that you find yourself in. And as the process moves along, you will more and more naturally gravitate towards experiencing yourself as a part of a greater whole. And as this happens, you will also notice that life starts to run more and more smoothly. You will notice that when you have separated yourself from all the chaos and turmoil, there is an observer's seat waiting for you, from which you can watch yourself aligning more and more naturally with the flow of life. You've now reached the end of the video. Remember to like and subscribe. Thank you for your time.